Hello and welcome to another video. For lunch, I'm going to make myself a pork chop. Seems simple enough, right? But you might be asking, how much can you dress up a pork chop anyway? The answer is quite a lot. If you're like me and you like to focus on maybe seeing how far you can push some of the cuisine, this is actually a really good exercise. So, we're going to make the fanciest pork chop that I currently make. This is a delicious dish. It looks nice. You can plate it, decorate it nicely on a plate. It's wonderful. So let's get started and look at the ingredients. So first we have the pork chop, and just about any pork chop will do. But they are better if they're thicker cut. This is a bit on the thin side. I usually cut my own pork chops, but not in this case. I have garlic powder, salt and pepper. We'll go ahead and do a dry rub on this. And in fact, just sprinkle some salt. The actual treatment of the meat on this dish is pretty minimal, though you can certainly be generous on the garlic. And then again, I'm gonna sprinkle a little more there, get it nice and even. There we go. There's our pork chop. Now for the base, I have about 60 grams or so of previously frozen spinach, and I usually use frozen spinach for this. I have a lovage leaf, and I'm going to just take one leaflet off because I'm going to use this as a garnish, and the rest of this I'm going to chop. These are all going to then get mixed together and baked. Lovage is really wonderful, but if you don't have lovage, you could either use flat leaf parsley or you could use celery leaves. And celery leaves are actually probably a little better and a little closer. But this is actually a really good reason to actually grow some of your own plants, because this is hard to find at the store, but it's not too hard to find when you're trying to grow it yourself. The final stage are mushrooms that we'll slice and fry in the oil. And a white wine. This is one of my go-to cooking wines. It's a very fruity Pinot Grigio from Italy. It's about €5 a bottle in the grocery store. But you can use any dry, fruity white wine for this. So doesn't matter whether you're looking at a California white wine or something like that. Just get something that's fruity and dry and full-bodied. Now before I start, I want to make a couple notes about the vegetarian options. Now, the composition of this particular dish, even though it's meat-centric, lends itself well to vegetarian options because the vegetable base includes nuts and cheese, both of which are protein sources. So if you want something that's vegetarian, you could actually leave the meat off, maybe add a few more nuts or a bit more on the vegetable base, and just put the mushrooms on top. You could also maybe put a fried egg in there. That would especially be useful if you didn't want to eat dairy, but you were okay eating eggs. And even if it's completely vegan, you already have a basis with the raisins, pine nuts, lovage, and spinach. So you can do a lot with this dish. And so whether or not you eat meat, whatever, you can probably find something in this to take as an inspiration and move forward with. So of course, one thing I need to say is ignore this pot. It's here for another video I'm making, but this one takes a while. I'm making sauerkraut. But anyway, for this base, what we're going to do is just mix everything together. I've already chopped the lovage, and it's important to mix the nuts and raisins and cheese in really well. And then once it's nicely mixed, I take a piece of baking paper. You don't have to put this on baking paper. You could just put it straight on a baking sheet if you have to. But baking paper is really nice practically. And in terms of improving the presentation of the dish, I would definitely recommend using it. What we're then going to do is we're going to just kind of shape it into the shape we want it when we're done. And I'm going to bake it at 150 Celsius, about 300 Fahrenheit, until it's melted. So this will go in the oven, and then in about 5 minutes, I will start cooking the pork chop. So this is starting to get hot. I've already added a little bit of oil for frying, but I'm going to let it get a little hotter. With meats, you always want to start with a hot pan. And what we're going to do is we're going to sear this on both sides, and then we're going to let the pan cool off a little bit. And as it cools off, the meat will slowly cook all the way through. So I have hot oil here, and I heated it up on a fairly high heat, but now I've turned it down. I'm going to cook this and brown both sides a little bit, and then I'll let it slowly cook through, and then we'll go on to the next stage. Now you can see I've already browned one side, the other side is browning. Now you can tell how done meat is by feel. As this cooks, the muscles fibers tense up, and so as when it's not very tense, it will be much softer, and when it's very raw, it will be softer, and as it cooks, it will get harder. I'm going to flip this over one more time. You can see it's getting nice and brown on both sides. And in about a minute or so, I'm going to take this off. So now, by feel, I can tell this is fairly done. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it off. And right into the same pan, I'm going to put in the mushrooms. Now, while I was cooking this, I turned it down to about a 3. I'm going to turn it back up to about a 6. And the reason for this is, I want these mushrooms to be fairly, I want the pan to be really hot when I add the wine. And so I want to bring the temperature out. Now I've been stirring these a bit. The point at this, on this stage isn't to get the mushrooms fully cooked, it's to get the pan really hot. So now that the pan is hot, you can tell this because the mushrooms are starting to become difficult to cook. I'm going to pour in some wine. And now I stir everything in. The mushrooms cook almost instantly. I'm going to let the wine cook down just a little bit. It's going to pull up all the meat pieces stuck to the pan. And now I have basically these fairly wet mushrooms in this wine sauce. And I'll take that off the heat. Just take a look at this. This is that base that I told you about. Now we're going to put everything together. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the base and I'm going to put it on here. Of course, not with the paper on it. But with the paper, it's fairly easy. I can just basically peel the paper off. And yeah, I'm going to lose some cheese, but that's okay. And if there's a little bit of cheese and stuff I can put around the outside, that's fine. But the paper is much easier to work with than trying to scrape this off with a spatula, for example. I'm going to go ahead and make that into a nice shape. Then on top of this goes the pork chop. On top of the pork chop go the mushrooms. And then, ideally I would use the rest of the sauce to decorate the plate, but not going to worry about that this time. What I'm going to do though, is I'm going to put my lovage leaf in the top. And there we have it. The fancy dressed pork chop. See, pork chops don't have to be plain. And now for the taste test. The flavors of the veggies make all the difference. Pork chop by itself is good, but it's when you pair it with that celery-like lovage flavor on top of the spinach bed that it really kind of comes out. And add that to the mushrooms with the wine. This is delicious. Bon appetit.